Thank you, sir. All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is ZPE's fourth monthly Tech Talk Tuesday. My name is Todd Atherton. I'm our channel sales director for the West region, and I'm joined today by Marc Westberg, who is our channel sales engineer, and will be doing the presentation and the demo today. Our plan is and has been to have a new technical session with a new topic on the second Tuesday of each month moving forward, and we're going to continue that into the new year. If you haven't been able to attend one of the previous ones, our partner portal has all of them listed, so you're more than welcome to go back and join, or send me a note and I can send you a link and we can get you directly to that. The majority of you guys that are joining today have attended at least some sort of technical overview with ZPE, but if not, please reach out and we'll get one scheduled for you, either with Marc or with one of our regional SEs, whichever way works for you guys, we'll get it taken care of. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Marc's presentation and demo will last about 30 minutes. And after, we will answer any questions. All participants are on mute, are on mute right now. So please put any questions that you might have into chat and send them to me. They will come to me directly, or you can send them to me directly. And we can either address them during or after the demo. Later today, you will all receive an email with details about how you can get your $25 Amazon gift card just for attending today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass over to Marc to get us going. Marc, back to you.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you everybody for attending this Tech Talk Tuesday. Today's topic is going to be on Nodegrid security, how to secure, and some best practices for the Nodegrid devices. So a little bit of an agenda, some best practices, user and group administration, firewall rule creation and tracking or understanding what rules are being hit within the Nodegrid device, disabling of services that aren't required within a specific organization per their risk management and compliance requirements. And then we'll go into a live demonstration of the overview topics. So ZPE devices have the ability to do role-based user and group access on for devices. What that means is we can have somebody set up or a user set up as an administrator, and then we can have multiple users within the device itself that can then have access to, say, only a network device or only a VMware server or a server, ILO or whatever the case might be, or IP-based devices. So that can get down to a very granular based solution for who can access what on the network. And then two-factor authentication. Within this demonstration, it will be of the functionality within the Nodegrid hardware device. Nodegrid also supports remote or external two-factor authentication. Some of the common ones are Okta, Ping, and so on and so forth. Firewall functionality. The ZPE systems device is based on a hardened Linux kernel, so it is based on IP chains. So it's IP address and port, UDP, ICMP, TCP, whatever the case might be required. This gives us the ability to add rules and additional chains based on the organization's security posture. And then within the ZPE hardware, several services are turned on by default, so it's easy for customers to enable or put their devices and manage them within a ZPE device. A best practice is to disable any services that are not being used, and we'll go through that in the demonstration. And then enabling fail to ban, especially, and fail to ban, basically what that is if somebody tries to log in multiple times and they are not allowed in, either by failed passwords, if it's a user that should be allowed and they've messed up their password, or if it's devices on the internet that are out there just trying to get into the device and do something bad to the device. We have failed to ban in there so that we can automatically ban those based on the number of attempts, the time between attempts, and then if we lock them out, we have the ability to set a time that those IP addresses are actually blocked so that they will not continue to hit firewall rules and take up memory and such on the Nodegrid device. So with that, the brief overview, the PowerPoint side of things is done. So let's move into the actual demo. I'll bring up my Nodegrid. Let me enlarge this guy. There we go. So the default page when you log into a Nodegrid device is the access page. You can see I have some devices connected to my in this case it's a bold S service router. So the first step is to set up password complexity. So we would go to security and then go to password rules, and we can enable password complexity for the passwords within the Nodegrid services router. A best practice is to have certain number of digits, upper and lowercase characters. We can change this to say 2. Minimum number of special characters, whatever the case might be. Minimum length, we can make this all the way out to I believe 256 characters. And then the number of passwords to store in history is if we enable password expiration, that means that you can't reuse a password when you're required to change your password. In this case, I have it set as 1. Password expiration, minimum days is the minimum number of days that the password is valid, and the max days, as it says, is when the password would need to be changed. And in this case, it would be 173 days. The password would be valid, then the user would get a warning on the login page. So the next best practice is, let's cancel that. Let's save the changes we made. The next best practice is to actually create a user that has admin rights and lock the admin user. So the reason for this is the admin user for ZPE default is admin. It's published all over the web. It just gives, even if you change the password on the Nodegrid device, which is required when you on first login, it still gives a perpetrator a way to at least understand, hey, I'm going to try admin because it's out there, and then I'll try a block of passwords. So the way to do that is go into add, and we'll create a user. Best not to use a company name or even the device type of name. So we'll just create device admin. And actually, I'm going to make that lowercase just because I don't type well. And then a password. And I will. And then we'll go to the next one. And we can also, if you're creating users for users within the organization, we can require them to change a password. We can have a corporate standard default password and then make them change it at the end. We can also set the account to expire. In our case, I'm going to add the admin user. I'm not going to allow Bitword to do that. I'm going to make the admin user and take the user group out of this. So now this is an admin user. So from there, before we disable the admin user, I'm going to go on to a next best practice is to add two-factor authentication. This is done for the purposes of this demonstration on the Nodegrid device. It has the capability to do one-time passwords. So what we would do is we would select authentication, then we would go to two-factor, and you can see there's none here currently, so we will add one. And in this case, I'm going to go to one I already tested, MFA check, and it's going to be one-time password. We could also go to an RSA server. And I'm going to enable this, and then it's going to be time-based, which is what Google Authenticator, Microsoft, whatever the authenticator of choice is. Or we can have counter-based, which is a code that is put in based on a code that shows up on the screen. In this case, I'll choose time-based, and then enforce OTP settings during login. What this does is provides a way for the user to set up their one-time password settings with their authenticator of choice, if it's Microsoft, Google, whatever their authenticator of choice is. So that sets up the two-factor authentication. In order to enable the two-factor authentication, we need to go to servers. In this case, I only have the local server. So we will select that. And then under two-factor authentication, you can see that MFA check now sets up. One note is, depending on the number of people or administrators that will be logging into the Nodegrid device, it would be an organization's posture to allow to enable two-factor authentication for the admin users. A best practice is that every user has their own account for logging, for auditing, for those kind of things. And the admin users only have access to make changes to the Nodegrid device itself. Making system changes, making network changes, those types of things. So in this case, I'm going to leave it on because I did put our user in the admin group. So now, if I save that, we have that all set up. The next step is to go in and log in as that user. So what I will do is I'll go up to the logout section and log out. And now I will log in as device admin, and I'll enter the password. And password 1 is still a valid password. No, I'm joking. So now what you see is the one-time password setup. So I will get my authenticator out, and I will add that. There we go. Okay, so now if I enter the verification code that we just received and I log in, you can see that I'm able to log in. So that was on the initial setup. Let's move and log out and then log back in and see what screen shows up. Password. And now you can see that they need, or the user would need to enter their one-time password that is in their authenticator. So we go to login, and now you can see we're in, and we're as device admin that has full administrative rights of the device. So from there, let's move on to user and group create, or let's go in first of all to security, and that the default is local accounts. It shows up, and let's lock the admin users so nobody can log in as an admin. Now, everybody who would log into this specific device would log in as device admin. So the next step would be to add another user, or let's go first add a group. So let's go to authorization, and I have a group that I have named network, and we can go in and go to profile, and you can see that I have only enabled users to manage devices, users of this group. From there, I gave them rights for general settings, connection settings, inbound access, management of devices, logging, custom fields, and things that they would need for their specific function within the corporation or within the organization. From there, we can move to devices, and you can see what devices are included in this group. We can go in and we can add devices. So these are additional devices that might be on the network that this user or this group might need access to. And we can allow certain things. We can allow them to look at the access, the audit log, the event log, sensor data, whatever the case might be for the organization's security policy. Device permissions, we can also have a group that say was read-only or give no access to specific devices. We can also allow users to control power, see power status only, or give them no access. And if we have a door control, we can also give door control or just door status, open, closed, whatever the case may be. So in this case, we'll save that. Hit OK. And now you can see that the gate SR, another device on my network, was allowed. And we can see that what was allowed to specific devices. And we can go into those and allow specific things to them. In this case, I'll add power control to my core switch. So now I can control power for that control switch if I'm a member of this group. So from there, we can go in once we have the group set up, and you can see that we have the ability to go down very granular as far as what device can be accessed by specific groups. So we'll add the device admin. Well, actually, let's back up. Cancel that. Let's go over one more thing. Remote groups. It's there. A lot of people don't understand what it is. This is if the device is connected to a Radius or TACAX server or an LDAP server. We can have the group that is presented by that server for a specific user in here, and then Nodegrid will actually put them in this specific group, in this case, network. So I just wanted to point that out. From there, let's go ahead and create another user, and we'll add them to typing is terrible. And we'll create a password for them. And we will put them in the network group. We'll take them out of the user group. And now they will only have access to the devices that are listed and the access of those devices that are listed in the network group settings. So we'll add that. And then we can go back to authorization, go to network, and now we can see the members are netadmin1. This netadmin1, when they first log in, they will get the one-time password setup page, as we pointed out earlier. So from there, once we've got our users added, we can go in and create firewall rules. So that that functionality is located under security and then firewall. And this is where we can add additional chains, or we can go into one of the existing chains. And in this case, the output is accept any. So this is an egress rule. This means going from the Nodegrid device out to something that is unknown to the Nodegrid device. If we go back to firewall, forward is something that is not known to the Nodegrid device and is coming from outside of the Nodegrid device, but the Nodegrid device is its transit mode. So say like it's the default gateway, but it's something behind in the network that the Nodegrid does not know about. So a forward rule would allow that traffic to transmit through the Nodegrid device. And then if we go back to the firewall again, input rule is coming in from outside of the Nodegrid device, either on the local network or from the internet, depending on how this specific device was set up. In this case, let's go in and add a rule that says my device is, as you can see, is on my local network. So I have several subnets. Let's say that ingress from 192.168.25.0. Let's change that. Let's do 15.0 /24. And then we'll allow it or we'll deny this traffic. Let's go and reject this traffic. The capabilities are accept, drop it. Drop is put no traffic back and say this was dropped or rejected or whatever. And reject is say to put on a return packet to the device. This traffic was rejected. Depends on the security posture. We can make a rule to only log traffic, or we can make it to accept. Rule number, in this case, I'm going to make it rule number 0. It's a best practice, or the way that the firewall, like all firewalls, is set up, is it is read from top down. So if the traffic meets a rule and action is done on that, the firewall will stop and say this traffic is allowed, denied, or whatever the case might be, just like any other firewall on the market. So in this case, I'll make a rule that disallows any of the unknown TCP ports ingressing to this device on any. So if you leave this blank, it means any. I'm just going to put in there for my firewall. And then I'm going to also put this to ETH0, which is my input interface. And the output interface, I'm just going to leave that as any. So we can do reverse matching. So that would put a rule in that says any traffic destined from my firewall, in this case 2.1, to this subnet would also be dropped, right? So it basically blocks all that. And then you can reverse match on all of them. You can enable state matching, which means that a state has to either be established or not established. And then you can allow fragments, unfragmented packets, depending on the security posture within the corporation. We can also set logging rules. In this case, I'll just leave it at debug as a default. You can log the sequence numbers so you can get a ton of information depending on what is needed. This log information could then be put to a syslog server or a collector that can take action on multiple inputs throughout the network. So from there, we'll select save. And then as you can see, our rule, it's lowest to highest. So I put this as 0. So it's going to drop all that traffic. If we want to see what's going on with the traffic, we can select traffic, and then we can go to security. And now we can see what rules are being hit within our IP chains environment. In this case, you can see this is an accept rule for everything. Inbound, forwarding, nothing is transiting through the device. And then output, you can see that I have traffic actually leaving from the Nodegrid device out to other devices or to the internet. A note here, we'll get into fail to ban in just a minute, but you can see that that is also here. So you can see what IPs, an actual rule will be added for each individual IP automatically, that basically sets a deny rule for any of the traffic that is that runs through fail to ban and is actually banned. So, and then IPv6, if it's enabled, that is also firewallable. Bad word, but we can also firewall IPv6 traffic is a better way to put it. So we can also see the NAT table. In this case, I'm not doing any natting. I have a separate device on my network that does that. So I'm not actually doing any natting, but the Nodegrid services router is fully capable of doing source destination IP mask, masquerading, whatever the case might be, changing an IP address within that egresses the Nodegrid device to another address that's allowed through a firewall or that a device needs to see. We can make that NAT traffic work also. So, and then we'll go in to security, and I'll set up the fail to ban. So we go to services, and down toward the bottom, we can see block hosts with multiple authentication fails. This is the fail to ban. This is the way to enable fail to ban. So in this case, I have it set for a host that is denied access will be blocked for 90 minutes. The number of authentication fails is 5 minutes. So if in this case, if 3 fails come in within 5 minutes, this the Nodegrid will deny that traffic for 90 minutes. And we can also have a whitelist of IP addresses. So IP addresses that fail to ban will not look at and will be automatically allowed in. In this case, this is a public subnet that I was given by my ISP, and I'm allowing all of my devices to not be looked at by the fail to ban functionality. So with that set up, and you can see I don't, as we saw earlier, I didn't have any traffic on that. So the next functionality is to disable services that are enabled by default or that are enabled in the Nodegrid services router that are not required by the organization. Best practice is to disable any service that's not allowed. That means there is no attack plane that a user or a perpetrator could try to get in to the device. So we can go through, we probably want to enable detection of USB devices, but in my case, I'm not using RPC or Google RPC. I'm not using FTP. I am using SNMP for my PDUs, so we'll leave that enabled. Enable Telnet. Telnet is an older protocol. Some corporations still use it, still need it. We could enable it. In this case, I'm not going to. Enable Telnet to manage devices. So that means the Nodegrid itself can telnet to devices I have a couple of devices on my network that I need to telnet to, so I'm going to leave that enabled. Best practice is to disable ICMP echo reply. Secure redirects, I usually disable that. And then disable telegraph, services status page, I leave that enabled. Enable reboot on the services status page, I leave that enabled. If you're not using VMware Manager, vSphere, we can disable that. If you're not using clustering, we can disable that. And if you're not using VM serial, we can disable that. Bluetooth, yes.
Mark, we're at the top of the hour. I just want to be
Okay.
respectful of people's time.
Yep.
We do have a couple questions that have come in, so I just want to let you know to kind of maybe wrap it up. And
Yep, I'm just finishing up.
Okay, perfect.
So from there, the only other best practice on this page is to disable HTTP access and enable redirecting from HTTP to HTTPS. And then the cryptographic protocols that are required within the organization can be set here and their cipher suites. So from there, we'll click Save. And now we have the majority of services that are not used within my organization saved, and now those services are disabled. So that basically concludes a brief overview of best practices and some of the security features of the ZPE services routers. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I just want to kind of go through, there's just a couple questions, but I want to make sure we get them answered.
Sure.
The first one came in, and I wasn't sure if you were going to answer it through your presentation or through your demo, so I didn't jump in, but can it do IPsec site-to-site tunnels?
Yes, so it can do IPsec site-to-site tunnels, it can do WireGuard tunnels, and it can be an SSL SSL server or an SSL client, SSL VPN server or client. Yep.
Okay, perfect. And if there's a follow-up question to that, throw it back into the questions and I'll ask that as well. The other one I think you did answer, but I just want to kind of throw it back out there. Can you manage what notifications users receive based on their groups? For example, network team receives network data, power infrastructure team receives power data, etc.
Yep, that functionality is also available based on group membership. 100%. Yep.
And then just two more quick ones real quick. So
sure.
Does Nodegrid hardware have a TPM, trusted platform module?
Yep. So that's where the SSH keys, any certificates, certificates for the cloud, those type of things are actually stored, and it is included in the Nodegrid services router. It also allows for file encryption, secure boot, and a myriad of other security things. Honestly, we have a 40-page document. If you need some nighttime reading, we can certainly get that to you on the security protocols included within the Nodegrid OS.
Okay, perfect. And then just one last quick one. So how does Nodegrid support next generation firewalls?
So we support next generation firewalls through the ability to run virtual machines on the Nodegrid services router. So one of the common practices is for a customer to go out and purchase a virtual machine firewall from one of the firewall companies, Fortinet, Palo Alto, SonicWall, whoever it might be, load that as a virtual machine, and then service chain the ports, the Ethernet ports, or the cellular ports to that specific firewall. And we do have the ability to run those on two separate Nodegrid devices and run two VMs and have those in an active passive solution for redundancy and failover.
Awesome, perfect. So that's all the questions. So thanks, Mark, so much. And thanks everyone for joining today's Tech Talk Tuesday. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing these on the second Tuesday of every month with a new topic. The next demo will be January 9th. We'll be sending out information on that. And Mark will be discussing clustering, setup and functionality of ZPE Nodegrid Manager to administer multiple ZPE Nodegrid devices. And for all of you that attended today, you'll be receiving an email shortly with details for the $25 Amazon gift card. Thanks so much. And if we don't talk to any of you guys, have a happy holidays, and we'll see you next month. Thanks so much.